This week on Straight Talking Cyber, just when Facebook thought its nightmare couldn't get any worse, along comes Google to make it significantly worse. And Wordle, the game that's captured everyone's attention, how do you play it without any privacy issues whatsoever?
In the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot from Facebook. Facebook's been talking about its results, how it's lost 10 billion or will lose 10 billion as a result of the Apple advertising changes, which we've spoken about on this show quite a lot of times before. Now, we've been expecting similar changes on Android phones. There's been a lot of talk about this really over the last year or so, but the changes that have come in seem to benefit advertisers just as much as they might slightly benefit users.
But is that any real surprise that Google are doing this? Because I mean, let's face it, it is their whole raison d'etre. Is that not right, Zach?
It is, and we saw this with cookies on Chrome and browser ad tracking and all the rest of it. So Google has a foot firmly in each camp. So it's the biggest digital advertising guru, as well as controlling Android and Chrome and some of the real hyperscale platforms out there. So whenever it makes a change, it's immediately under attack because it's conflicted. And I think this is another example where, yeah, it's going to give a proper punch to Facebook here, but what's the impact to Google? Because Google thus far has, while Facebook's slumping, Google's flying, and, coincidence?
Yeah, and Facebook's been talking about this quite a lot as well too, because Facebook's really annoyed that Google has a search deal with Apple and is able to make money through that, yet Facebook can't make money or can't effectively track its ad campaigns for advertisers through the identifier for advertisers being taken away. So in a way, it's really, really hammered Facebook, but not really damaged Google as much. So that's not really fair, is it?
Google adds some value. Okay, yeah, we clearly have issues on privacy and everything else, but it at least provides stuff. I think Facebook's problem ultimately is its business model is tracking people and then selling them targeted advertising. The problem isn't Apple and it isn't Google. The problem is Facebook's business model. People are sick and tired of it and they don't want it anymore. And Facebook has got nothing to fall back on apart from it's kind of, the metaverse fantasy, which, is a little bit Emperor's New Clothes. Great idea. Is it going to be, one of the top 5 companies in the world with the method? Of course it isn't.
Is it going to work? I mean, this whole metaverse thing is nothing new. I wrote a book. It was published by the Science Museum probably 5, 6, 7, maybe probably 10 years ago, and that was all about the psychology of who you are online and offline. I did a lot of interviews with people on things like Second Life then. Second Life has been trying this forever, and they've not massively succeeded. Why Facebook? Why is Meta going to massively succeed? I just don't see it.
It's desperation, isn't it? And if you work for Facebook now, you have to be called a MetaMate as well. So that's your new name as a Facebook employee. You can see that there's going to be quite a few people maybe handing in their notice.
Indeed, Forbesy friend.
Exactly. We don't like those names. Let's not. Talking of, there's another thing that you've been playing quite a lot of, isn't there, Davey? It's called Wordle, and most people would have heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, don't tell everybody, it's too late now. The cat's out the bag, because I've been moaning at people about all the social sharing, especially on Twitter, of their little Wordle map. If you see these green and yellow squares on a grid, that's Wordle. And I've been explaining to lots of people elsewhere in print and online how you can get rid of those by muting those words, so Wordle doesn't appear in your feed. But yeah, I play Wordle. Now, one of the things that people ask me is, what are the privacy implications of playing Wordle? What data do they collect? Honestly, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad. But with the New York Times now buying it, and there's been a bit of a split in the code already, there's stuff online about changes that have been made. They've censored, filtered out certain curse words that they don't like. So the dictionary is different. So players who are playing the original Wordle off the website and players who are playing via the New York Times feasibly and are indeed getting different answers on the same day. So there's always, when you see a big organization like the New York Times or anybody else taking something over, you worry about the privacy side of things. What data are they collecting? Now, I want to still play Wordle because I enjoy it. I don't want to do it through the New York Times, thank you very much. And I don't even do it through the website, because what I've done is very easily just downloaded the entire code base because it's really simple to do. That's then saved onto my iPhone, and I can actually play it locally on my iPhone every day without having to worry about privacy implications at all. And I'll explain exactly how you do that step by step in an article.
Great. So what are the privacy implications for people who are playing Wordle online then? Is it a big deal for those people who are using the New York Times website?
I don't know. I think that's the answer. I don't know. We don't know at the moment. I don't know what data they collect. But I'd be extraordinarily surprised if they collect none. I've not actually looked at the New York Times. I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know what their terms and conditions are. I don't know what waivers you have to give. I don't know what the cookie side of things is, what you have to opt into and opt out of. But I'll try taking a look.
You've got millions of people who every day over breakfast go to this New York Times page. The name of the page is simple, but you know, we're at the beginning of it. They didn't buy it to do nothing, right? So they're collecting a lot of identifiers, where those identifiers are available. It is web tracking, and the way that web tracking is available depending on what browser you're using. So okay, here's a piece of advice. Don't, you know, if you're gonna go and play Wordle, then use Safari or Firefox or something else. Don't use Chrome. You know, it would be a good piece of advice.
And that's interesting because that's really interesting because you're talking about web tracking and just taking your normal precautions when you do anything. And I think this is another thing that's come up recently, Super Bowl final. And during the Super Bowl, there was an advert from Coinbase, which consisted just of, was it 30 seconds or maybe a little bit more, just a QR code bouncing around the screen for millions of people just to scan. This then kicked off on social media with certain security commentators saying, God, this is awful. You know, none of these people realize that the danger they're putting themselves into. Myself and an awful lot of others disagree. We don't think that QR codes are inherently dangerous. Asking if QR codes are safe to use, secure to use, is a bit like saying, are links safe to click? And the answer to both is yes, unless they're not.
So you have to check the source, basically, or you have to go to the main website. You can't just download anything that gets sent to your phone, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a number of things, you know, have antivirus or security measures installed and understand risk. Understand, like, you shouldn't just click on a link that's sent to you in a random email. You shouldn't click on a QR code the same way. Indeed, if a QR code comes in an email, I would immediately question it, because why aren't they just putting a link in? You know, they don't need that. But more to the point, it's not the QR code itself that's a problem, although theoretically, technically, you could inject malware code into that. So the URL it leads to is actually a malicious URL that does something malicious on your phone as you do it, if you haven't got stuff in place. But it's more the destination that it goes to. QR codes, malicious QR codes, are just a launch point, a launch board for phishing. That's it. That's pretty much what it is. Just like you click on a link and it takes you to a phishing site. So clicking on a malicious QR code is that initial point to take you to a phishing site. So you need to just be sensible, follow the mitigation advice that you'll get online from anybody, including us, and just be safe. You know, there's nothing inherently malicious about a QR code. It's as simple as that.
If you want more advice, then there's a QR code on your screen now. Just follow the link.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, don't click on QR codes in random places. And I don't just mean in your email. I mean, the thing with QR codes is they're appearing in the real world in physical form. So there's been a spate of people putting their own QR codes, a malicious code that takes you to a phishing site, on parking meters, for example. So instead of being taken to the actual operator's site to pay, you're taken to a fraudulent site to pay. So, you know, yeah, I know this sounds silly, but you just need to check these things. You know, when you're looking at a parking meter, as an example, and there's a QR code, does it look like it's a QR code stuck on top of another QR code? Is there a ridge there? Is it poorly printed? Is that QR code appearing in a random place on a table or a bench or somewhere where it shouldn't be. You know, just don't click on stuff, whether that's a link or a QR code. Just don't click on stuff unless you're sure that you need to, that it's appropriate.
See, David, there's going to be loads of people crowded around parking meters, like examining the QR codes now, like getting a knife and seeing if it comes off. Yeah. It's good to do, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. One last thing probably to finish the show today is iOS 15.4 is going to arrive any minute soon. And there are quite a few improvements to the password manager, the keychain password manager. I've already spoken about one of the changes, which is you can add notes to passwords, such as kind of security questions and stuff like that. There's also an improvement now in the Safari side, which is when you create a new password for something, now the username is going to be asked for. So sometimes if you're using the Safari keychain, it can actually not save the username. So when you're looking at your keychain, you're like, what's this? What's the username for this? I don't know. Now it's going to insist that's put in, which is another improvement for usability.
That's a default as well, isn't it? It will default to that. Default. And if you don't put your username in, then it won't save the login.
Exactly, it won't save. So you have to do that. So it forces you to use it in the right way, which is great, because if not, you'll just end with a mess of a password manager, and then some people might not even use it. So this is a great change, although obviously the keychain isn't as good as another password manager, say by 1Password, because it doesn't have as many features. It is a good start if you don't have one, and that's a big improvement.